So for our next session, Leo Taddeo, CEO and President of Appgate, is going to join us to discuss why direct-rooted network architecture is important and matters for federal civilian agencies. Welcome, Leo.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So I try not to take myself too seriously when I do these things. I'm the CEO of Appgate. I appreciate Carahsoft providing us a venue to talk about our company and how we differentiate. I think this is an interesting venue. When I walked in, I wasn't sure if it was 9 a.m. or 9 p.m., and I didn't know whether to order a coffee or a martini. So I'll try to get through this so that keep you guys focused and give you some information that's worth taking away. So let me get started here. Here we go. So here's who I am. I'm Leo Taddeo. I'm the CEO and President of Appgate. I did not spend my career in the commercial sector. I spent most of my career in government, starting with military service, but then I became an FBI agent and I spent most of my career with the FBI. I left as part of the senior executive service. I was the special agent in charge of cyber and special operations in Manhattan, and I left the bureau to start a commercial career, and I've been through a number of positions, and now I find myself as CEO of a public company, which is something that I hadn't anticipated. But it's been a great journey. I've learned a lot, and I hope to impart some of that onto you. I take a look at cyber from the adversary's perspective. It's just a habit I have as an agent. I try to think like the adversary thinks and try to impose cost on the adversary. And so you'll see a lot of the value in our solution, making it harder for the adversary to actually accomplish what they are trying to accomplish. There's a lot about zero trust that we are big fans of, but most of it has now been overtaken by marketing material, and I'm going to try to cut through some of that for you with a main differentiator, and that is this maniacal bias towards cloud. And I don't think that's always the case for the best interests for government. I think at some point, government has to take a step back and really think about who's managing the data, who's touching the data, who's routing the data. And if the government can't take responsibility for that, then I think you're shortchanging the citizens and those we're trying to protect. So we differentiate on a very important factor. We direct route traffic, which means the traffic never leaves the agency's walls. It doesn't go through somebody else's cloud. It doesn't go through, that's really not zero trust in our mind. So you'll see throughout the presentation a focus on direct routed versus cloud routed. Okay, great. So this is standard stuff. We all know we're falling behind. The digital world has changed, but our infrastructure and our security hasn't really kept up. Primarily because we have seen a rapid transition from on-prem to work from home and co-located and cloud services. So the infrastructure that supports the delivery of IT has changed, the way people work has changed, and the way we develop and deliver IT has changed. And unfortunately, security has been lagging behind. And so we are in this market for two values. One is to provide cybersecurity value. Of course, we impose cost on the adversary. The second is to deliver business ROI. So we have some very specific cost savings benefits for simplifying the network and reducing management overhead. But we're a secure access company. Our two value props, as they say, are cybersecurity and business ROI. Okay, this is a company at a glance. So we talk about zero trust. You have to trust your vendor. You have to understand who they are and what they do and where they come from. So this is Appgate at a glance. Our revenue is about $44 million, and our ARR, that's our recurring revenue, is about $36 million last quarter. We have a global headcount. We're about 400 employees globally, mostly in the United States, some in LATAM, Europe, and the Middle East, and Asia. You're going to hear some more about our customers. These are really what we're most proud of. These are some very sophisticated, large enterprises. U.S. Air Force, FINRA, you can see Rackspace. We have a lot of technology companies that select our solution. We also have a lot of cybersecurity companies that select our solution, especially when they're protecting federal environments. Okay, here's the crux of it, folks, and I'm going to explain to you what we mean by zero trust network access. Instead of a diagram with a lot of lines pointing from symbol to symbol, I'm just going to put it into three basic building blocks. On the left-hand side of the slide you'll see all the ways that our users connect. We have third-party suppliers, remote users, DevOps on-site, and all of the devices that they use. On the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see all of the areas where they have to obtain access and get secure access, from private cloud, public cloud, on-prem, co-location, meaning data centers, and SaaS apps. So in between is where the solution it operates. We are a secure access company, so we're connecting all users and all devices to all environments in a special way. And it's not so special, it's Zero Trust Network Access. Very well defined in NIST, very well defined in Gartner, but not as well known in the industry because we have had a runway to get to this point, but I think it's important for this audience to understand it a little better, and that's why I'm here. So let me start with its identity-centric in the upper left of the middle part of the slide. Identity meaning a firewall will generally do the following. It will say, I can decide whether this IP address can connect to that IP address, and if the rules allow it, I will allow the connection. And so you find managers having to decide and manage a lot of IP addresses and receiving IP addresses, destination IP addresses, which makes it hard to manage. We use the identity of the individual. So Jim from banking, Jim from HR, Jane from finance. What are her roles? What are her responsibilities? She's a human being with job functions, and so our access controls are based on identity, not IP addresses. On the top right of the middle is least privilege. Of course, that's a known and important principle. We have microsegmentation as part of our solution, which means the user only gets access to what they need, of course, and can see nothing other than what they have access to. On the bottom right, flexible and agile. So these are API integrations. We integrate with just about every other vendor out there, from endpoint solutions to cloud providers to threat intelligence platforms. We can ingest all of that information and make policy-based decisions. One of the previous speakers talked about having a system that can make decisions based on context of the device health, of the user health, but also on intelligence around the user's behavior. We have those capabilities, and we integrate with companies that have those capabilities so that we can fit your business model. On the lower left, you'll see cloaked infrastructure. This is particularly important today. It's of interest to me. What it means is that none of the infrastructure that supports this access control is scannable or visible to an adversary. And again, I talked about it earlier. I tend to think about imposing cost on the adversary, and if you can't find the infrastructure, it's much harder to find vulnerabilities in the infrastructure and attack the infrastructure. And if you look at what's happening today, we see a shift in APT tactics from targeting endpoints and individuals with phishing attacks to really looking for vulnerabilities in internet-facing legacy network devices. What do I mean by that? So there are end-of-life routers. Cisco routers have been targeted. These are great vendors, by the way. These are great companies. It's really hard to do patching faster than the adversary can do a reverse-engineered vulnerability exploit. And so we find that we see Citrix, for example, being attacked. We see Avanti being exploited. And the reason they can be exploited is that they're visible. They have to be visible by their nature of their architecture. We don't believe that that is a sound approach. We cloak the architecture with a type of port knocking so that any scan that an adversary might do will result in zero responses. So keep in mind, single packet authorization. If you're trying to protect against what are called living off the land attacks, or what we see APTs like Volt Typhoon doing recently, think about single packet authorization as a means to quickly put those legacy devices behind a Zero Trust Network Access platform that can make it virtually impossible for the adversary to find. On the bottom, finally, unified policy engine, which means managers aren't trying to manage access for on-campus employees or users versus remote users. Everyone has the same experience, everyone has the same policy, and managing that means not having to decide whether a person's origination point matters. It's truly zero trust, whether the user is on-prem, off-prem, remote, it doesn't matter. It's a unified policy engine all across. So it makes lower overhead possible. I'm going to go through this very quickly. Why do we win? We win in government because we're direct routed. As I mentioned, the traffic does not transit our infrastructure. It remains within the walls of the agency. And so many of our competitors, and as I mentioned, I think that they're great solutions. I just don't think they're solutions for most government applications, because what you're doing is allowing the vendor to touch your data, to route your data, and to examine your data. And we think that is a flawed architecture for sensitive government applications. Cloaked infrastructure, I mentioned. Dynamic and continuous is another feature where we can continuously check context. Once a user connects, it is usually a persistent connection. We have changed that, and we check the context regularly so that if a context parameter changes, for example, if the user goes from a trusted network to a Starbucks, we can call for a step-up authentication or some other risk mitigation step. We are very focused on microperimeters, which means we cloak the remaining components of the infrastructure. The user, once the user has access, does not have visibility on any other part of the infrastructure. We're programmable and adaptable, which means we can adapt to your business. And we compete very favorably against customers on the right. We're not a big company. We're trying to get more visible. And unfortunately, being visible usually means you win in this business. But I think if you take a look at the tech, if you take a look at the team behind the tech, and you take a look at where we're winning, you'll see some competitive advantages that may not be easy to find. And again, that's why I'm here. Let me go through the direct routed difference in some more detail. On the bottom half of the slide, you'll see a cloud routed ZTNA model where the user's traffic enters into a vendor cloud from broker to connector, and it is examined or filtered or somehow made secure. This creates a number of problems for the enterprise. One is it is multi-tenant. Second is the points of presence aren't everywhere, which means there are some network routing challenges which affect user experience. There's some hairpinning of traffic. There are potential hidden charges for traffic within those vendor models, and the availability and scalability of those models is sometimes difficult to measure. So you're more dependent on whether someone is managing their cloud effectively, and your availability may depend on someone else's availability, and that may not be suitable for certain critical applications. The direct routed model at the top, which is our model, does not route the government's traffic through our cloud. We allow you to route it through your infrastructure. We have a MTLS direct encrypted tunnel from the endpoint to the application and to the protected resources. And it is an efficient routing model. The government maintains full control over the network traffic. It's lower latency, better user experience. And it can protect legacy workloads that don't necessarily lend themselves to modern risk mitigation techniques such as multi-factor authentication. We can impose that on some legacy systems as well. And last but not least, on the right-hand side is ecosystem interoperability. We have the ability to work with great vendors like CrowdStrike and Microsoft and others, and so we are seamless in our integration. Let me go through. This applies to government managers and leaders who are trying to map capabilities to the CISA Zero Trust model alignment. You'll see where the black box is where we have an operational capability that satisfies the model. The red boxes we can enhance. I'm happy to send these slides out to anybody who wants them, but as you're thinking about covering down on the CISA requirements, here's a way to think about it using Zero Trust Network Access. And more about use cases. So we have, of course, on the left-hand side, remote access. cloud and hybrid deployments. There is no such thing as all cloud or all on-prem. Anyone who is moving towards the cloud has to manage and continue to operate and maintain existing solutions that don't migrate well to the cloud. So everyone is hybrid. Everyone's going to stay hybrid for the foreseeable future. And having the ability to protect those environments with a uniform policy and tool is important. We help with that cloud migration. We also help with third-party access, secure DevOps, and interagency collaboration, which means we have the ability to operate with other ZTNA providers. If another agency has selected a competing vendor, we are not a platform that demands you use all of our tools. We operate with other tools. The other advantage of not having a platform is not having to consume all of the features and functions of the platform provider. We believe in best-of-breed approach according to the enterprise's needs. If the enterprise desires a platform approach, it's sort of an easy button, but not necessarily the best choices are made for your architecture and your needs. And so we take a more best-of-breed approach, and we have deliberately designed our platform to work with other platforms. Lastly here, I think this is one of the last slides, talked about business ROI. It's not enough to provide cybersecurity value. A company today must provide a business ROI. This is a way of explaining how the tool pays for itself. I won't go through all of these. These are customer experiences that we have documented. 83% saw a significant reduction in the number of security incidents. Of course, that applies to the cybersecurity value. In the blue on the right, 55% average reduction in number of tools required to manage on-premise access. Those are tools like NAC, local Wi-Fi management, some other local management tools. On the top right, 67% reduction in network connectivity costs. This is a deprovisioning of MPLS and dedicated SD-WAN. We have customers saving millions of dollars getting rid of those costly network traffic management tools. And lastly, 32% reduction in staff and time needed to manage those tools, which means those highly skilled employees can be repurposed for higher order tasks. Let's take a look at how we're certified. We do have a number of ATOs and certifications up to IL5 and IL6, common criteria certified. We have a number of ATOs. We're part of the Air Force's CNAP, which means we are required, and based on the reference architecture, it's AppGate that's providing access. And lastly, before we run out of time, here are the customers. So establishing, again, trust and credibility in AppGate, you just have to take a look at some of the customers we have, including Cyber Command. We are leading in a number of DoD military branches, and we have a number of great logos that I think should give us the credibility we need to have a conversation. You could take a look at, for example, DIA, part of the intelligence community, where we are helping them with their modernization efforts. Space Force, we're helping Space Force with their modernization efforts. So I want to close out by saying we're not for everybody. We're certainly not for those of you who want to push the easy button. We are a dedicated, best-of-breed ZTNA platform that will allow an agency to maintain control of its environment, allow an agency to reduce costs, and allow an agency to get closer to that zero trust maturity model. Happy to take any questions. I think I've got about a minute left, and looking forward to meeting and discussing this further. We're kind of in our own cloaked environment. We're in the far right corner, closest to the bar. We don't have our banner, but you can find Peter and Tim and Dylan, and they'll be happy to answer questions. We've got some really smart engineers back there. Happy to talk further, but also happy to take questions about any of the presentation. Yes, sir.
More overview on the open policy module that you mentioned, the open policy engine, or
yeah. So we have there are requirements for managing access that in today's tool set require managers to differentiate between an on-premise user routing through internal firewalls out to the internet and a remote user routing from a home router, for example, to an application in a data center, all of those access rules are managed around IP addresses and around IP tables within firewalls. We manage it differently. We have a unified platform so that if a person is entitled to access a particular application, it doesn't matter where they're coming from, the same rules, the same experience will apply, and the same enforcement principles will apply. So it's a uniform policy management, meaning we have eliminated the complexity of having to determine from where the user is attempting to access. And that's really the crux of zero trust. Zero trust is all about eliminating trust from the origination point. It's challenging every connection every time. And so that's what I mean by a uniform policy platform. Okay, folks, I think I'm out of time, but we do have a presence in the far right corner. Happy to meet you and have some further conversations. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you all giving me a chance to talk about Appgate. Thank you.